Vince the Foresters, welcome. We're coming at you live from frickin' Anchorage, frickin' Alaska.
Except for this is being recorded. It's not live.
It's live right now. It's a live recorded album with only one track, but it's from Anchorage, Alaska, which is really cool. I don't get to do them outside of the house very often, and I don't get to do them with other people very often, but those are the best ones so far, and I'm glad that I'm getting to do another one of those today. So, I'm here with the one and the only. He's in my phone as the real Grant Ford Robinson. Grant, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Welcome to Alaska.
Thank you. So, Grant is the whole reason that I'm in Alaska. He's moved here. When did you move here?
January of 2019.
Okay, so Grant's been here about a year and a half. I flopped trying to come up here last summer, but it's a good thing because timing and world situation wise, this turned out to be a really, really good time to come to Alaska. But we'll get into all that in just a second, very quickly. Let me begin with our verse of the episode, the verse of the pod, which is going to be Psalm 118:24. Grant, do you know it by heart?
I do not.
I don't either. I had to pull it up, but it's one everybody's heard. We've heard this before. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Grant's dad is the music minister at my church, Central Baptist in Fountain City, and I remember us singing lots of songs, at least one song in particular. This is the day that the Lord has made, and I will be exceeding glad. That's where it comes from. So, fun fact. Can you tell we're a little fired up? If you are watching on YouTube, which is going to be at least 3 or 4 days after this is recorded because of where we're going, you see that we're both sipping on a little Starbucks Frappuccino goodness. Well, that's only because we've reached peak masculinity while being here in Alaska, and sometimes you just need what was this, the Frappuccino Mocha Cookie Crumble.
Something like that.
Grande Mocha Cookie Crumble. This is going to get us to Talkeetna. That's where we're going. We're actually pit stopping in Wasilla. We're going to say hello to Sarah Palin if we see her. We probably won't. But Wasilla for some groceries, some food and drink, and ice. Oreos are on the list. And then we're going to Talkeetna, where we're camping tonight with 14, 15 people. We don't know. We know that a friend of Grant's has 3 campsites reserved for us. And then we're taking a train to the Susitna River, up the Susitna River. And then we're rafting down over the next 3 days. But we can talk about that when we get back. What I want to do right now is talk to Grant about what he does up here, what he's been doing the last year and a half, and what we've done just in the last 2 or 3 days since we've been in Alaska. So, Grant has a really cool job. Grant, just as much as you want to delve into what you do, tell the fine people.
Well, so I worked for the local NBC affiliate, KTUU Channel 2. I got an email after putting up some stuff on YouTube, and they said, hey, we have a job opening, you should apply. And so I did, and then obviously I ended up taking a job up here. I'm a reporter there, basically. I'm a reporter and videographer, shoot, write, edit all the own video and whatnot. We're all general assignment reporters, but I do a lot of outdoor and environmental stuff. And so during the summers, we have a long-standing series. It's just the fishing report, and it is kind of what it sounds like. You go out and talk about fishing with different folks and go out fishing. It's a pretty unique place for sure, not something you see on most local news stations.
And it was fun because I got to be a part of the latest fishing report episode, because timing-wise it worked out really well. I was here for the opening day of lingcod season, which if you were like me, you've never heard or seen a lingcod. If you look them up, what I thought they looked like, I think they look like giant walleye with big heads, is what they look like to me. So we were here for lingcod season when it opened on July 1st. It's July 3rd right now when this is being recorded, but we got to go out with a guy named Hunter Keogh, who he and his father run Keogh's Guide Services out of Ninilchik. And we had about a 2.5 hour boat ride out into the Alaskan Gulf. It was freaking awesome. And we, as far as fishing goes, we absolutely kicked their teeth in all day long. Which, so far, I feel like I've gotten really lucky on saltwater trips. And you usually catch them really good on saltwater because it's just more fun and bigger fish than freshwater. But we smashed them. We caught lingcod, we caught halibut, we caught black bass, which are a type of rockfish. There's tons of different types of rockfish. Grant caught a copper one. We caught yellow eye. We caught kelp greenling. I'm getting these names better. I'm getting them in my head
100% right there.
Yeah, I didn't miss a beat. I've had the bad habit of calling the rockfish rock bass, but they're not rock bass. It's something different. But yeah, I mean, it was just so cool, and it's so foreign to what I'm used to doing, which is what's so fun about it. Because we were throwing, it was 65-pound braid, which isn't anything outrageous. We've got that occasionally in the bass world, but you're throwing literally a 1-pound jig head, a 16-ounce jig head with probably an 8 or 10-inch grub, huge grub. It's about as big around as, it's not as big around as your wrist, but it's as big around as something. And you're fishing, I mean, we were fishing it from 100 to 220 feet deep, and just jigging it. He said those big reels is about 37 inches a turn. So you'd let it hit the bottom, crank it 4 or 5 times, sit there and jig it, and then you'd just winch them up. And gosh, it was fun. You could keep 2 lingcod a piece. You could keep 2 halibut a piece. You could keep, I don't know how many yellow eye. 1 yellow eye? Yeah, 1 yellow eye, 4 rockfish. And our boat that had 6 people fishing, we just about caught our limit and everything, and we're passing. There's a Bass Pro, the Anchorage Bass Pro. We got those down.
We have a Bass Pro.
We have a Bass Pro, and yeah. Oh, you did?
Bass Pro and Cabela's and 2 Costco's.
Wow, you're loaded for bear. So, anyways, that was a blast, and it was fun because on the way, so it was rough. Terrible water, because we were in a 30-foot boat. Koffler, every boat brand I've seen up here I have not heard of, just about. But we were in a Koffler that was 30 feet long. It had 250 shows, so motor I'm used to. They couldn't believe how fast our bass boats go. But I mean, there were times where the back end would drop into the bottom of a wave, and I'd look up, and the wave coming was taller than I was standing on the back of the boat. Not very often, but it happened 3 or 4 times. He's like, no, this is pretty crappy. There's only one other boat we ever saw out there. And yeah, man, it was fun. We ran back in. He said, we'll stop somewhere in some calmer water and see if we can catch some rock bass. And crap, no, dang it. I've been doing so good. Rockfish. And sure enough, I mean, we pull up, grab them. He's like, let me go see what these are. Drops the spoon down, catches one on his first drop. And he says, all right, y'all better grab a rod. And then it was not very common where there wasn't somebody hooked up out deep catching the lingcod, but it was like every drop, everybody was catching one when we were in the rockfish. So that was, and they're not nearly as big, but they're going to eat good. We ended up having 56 pounds of fish that we picked up coming back today. And because we left the boat in Ninilchik and went to Homer. So what is Homer kind of known? How would you summarize Homer?
Well, Homer is the halibut capital of the world. That's how they market themselves. It's a so it's a fishing town, but it's got also a kind of hotbed for visual artists in Alaska, as well as other different types of art.
something else I've learned. There are a lot of loaded questions that have very intricate and complex answers in Alaska. For instance, the Pebble Mine. I've been here for 3 days. I can already tell you, I hate the Pebble Mine. I'm getting me a no Pebble Mine sticker before I leave. And apparently we may be stopping somewhere I can get a no Pebble Mine buff. Well, by gosh, I'm gonna rip it. I'm trying to find a sticker for my car. Anyways, yeah, it's very, very, very different. There's just, Grant could obviously go into a lot more depth with it. We would be here for days, but it's very obvious that there are a whole lot of issues that are very specific to Alaska that nobody else in the country has ever heard of, thought of, or has to even remotely deal with. So that's been interesting to try and grasp some of that goes on here. But Homer was very, very cool. We stayed in probably the coolest Airbnb on earth. I think that's maybe a fair statement. Maybe not, but we stayed in a really, really cool spot. It was Cottonwood Cabins was the name of it. And their setup is at a working greenhouse, because apparently businesses here will rent plants in the warm season to put outside of their businesses, and this place supplies those. But they've got an Airstream trailer, an A-frame cabin. The cottage is where we stayed, that's inside of a greenhouse. It's essentially a dry cabin in a greenhouse. They've got
What is a dry cabin, Sam?
A dry cabin, I now know, is a cabin with no running water. We've stayed in them, 3 nights in a row now. We've stayed in dry cabins. One would you say on the Clam Gulch or in the Clam Gulch? In Clam Gulch, we stayed in a dry cabin. That was very, very cool. That's what, I feel like if you Googled remote dry cabin pictures, that's what would pop up. It was very neat. And in a really pretty spot. And then we stayed at the Airbnb in Homer. But it's a cabin with no running water, which I felt stupid when I asked, and that was the response I got. It's dry because there's no running water. That makes a lot of sense, which is why there are outhouses there. But anyways, and there's a 4-story tree house. 2 of them that you can rent that rent for Airbnb are on the 2nd floor. It's literally just a cabin or a tree house that these people have built by hand, and it says it's been there for about 20 years. They've built these 2. There's a little 3rd floor commons area. They've got a bunch of old records. You'll have to, there's going to be a YouTube video. There is a YouTube video up, unless you're listening to this within the last 6 hours of it being posted. There's a YouTube video up. The end of the Lingcod opener video, there's a tour of the whole place where we're staying, and it's very, very neat and super cool, friendly people that ran it. But Homer, really good food. Anchorage, really good food. I mean, you're freaking in the middle of some of the best fishing. I mean, shrimp. Dana, my fiance can't eat shrimp, so now that I'm gone for a week, I'm gonna eat all the shrimp I can possibly eat. But yeah, so now we're in the car. We've been in the car all day, going from Homer to Anchorage. Now we're going from Anchorage to Wasilla to Talkeetna. Man,
Which is how many miles?
I have no idea. Well, it was 200 from Anchorage from Homer. I don't know how many miles it is to Talkeetna. I could look at this thing and... Is this taking us to Wasilla?
That's taking us to the Fred Meyer.
So we're 32 minutes from the Fred Meyer in Wasilla. I don't know. How many miles is it?
It's a lot of miles.
It's a lot of miles. It's a lot. Thankfully, there has not been construction. It's July 4th weekend, so it seems like they've shut some of that down to let the traffic flow like wine. And we haven't hit any. And we just passed a moose sign, which reminds me, I've seen 3 freaking moose. He said that you may not see them this time of year. It's not nearly as common as the winter, but by gosh, we've seen them. I saw all 3 of them yesterday. No, I saw 2 of them on the 1st. I saw 1 yesterday. But yeah, 3 moose, and we were close to all of them. It's not like I had to glass them from a top of a ridge. They were hundreds of yards away. They were right off the road. We've seen moose. We've seen doll sheep. We've seen sea lions. We've seen humpback whales. And we're getting the full Alaskan experience. I thought that I wanted to see a black bear when we were trout and salmon fishing, but then I got in the water and realized that I couldn't move. I was pretty immobile, and I realized, yeah, that would be okay with not seeing a bear right here. But anyways, we're back. We've left Anchorage. We went and picked up the raft. It's a raft that'll hold 3 people. It's big. Like when we blow it up, I feel like it's gonna back window of the car, if you see the video, that's clear. Yeah, because we're loaded down for 3 days of floating and camping. Big group of people going, it's going to be a blast. So, we've done a lot in just 3 days. Grant's been here a year and a half, so I'm curious, and I don't think I will know the answers to probably any of these things, but I'd said yesterday I probably wouldn't want to be here in the wintertime just for the cold, but Grant was telling me all the things to do in the winter.
Forgot about that. And yeah, so I got my scuba certification and did that in either November or December.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, so that's actually a really cool time to dive, because right now the water is super full of plankton and all this like algae and stuff, which is why there are so many whales and all those things up here, because they're up here feeding in the summer because there's so much food for them, but that really decreases your visibility for diving. So diving in the winter is super cool. Plus you're wearing a dry suit anyway, so you have like I mean, people in Alaska and in the north would compare it to like what you wear as a base layer for when you're snow machining, but if you've never done that, it's basically like a 2 to 3 inch thick like I don't know exactly what it is, but insulating suit you get into, then you put the dry suit on top of that. So as long as you stay dry, you're warm. And that goes, from head all the way up to your neck. Then I have dry gloves, so my hands never even touch the water. Just a little bit of skin around the edge of my face, but then that goes numb, and then you're golden.
Once you can't feel it, it's not cold.
Yeah, so that's probably just the overall. I mean, you can do that at any time. So that's probably my favorite thing I've done since moving to Alaska. Which of course you can scuba dive other places, but it is super neat to scuba dive in Alaska, just because it isn't what most people think of when they think about activities to do up here. As far as wintertime things, it's kind of hard to say. There's no like one thing that's like, oh my gosh, this is my favorite wintertime activity. Like, we have to do this weekend. I've done a lot of neat things. I really discounted how fun ice fishing could be before I moved up here. I was like, yeah, I have no interest in ice fishing. It just seems super boring to me. But it is actually pretty fun. I enjoy it, especially if you go out with someone who knows what they're doing and has electronics. That's really the deal thing. Just electronics change the game.
Yeah.
Electronics and snow machines or four-wheelers to get you to wherever you need to get to. Or some of these lakes, they plow roads on.
That's cool.
So, like, a big lake is a big community up here in the valley, and the community just it plows the snow off a good part of the lake, so there are literally ice roads over the lake. And you can drive your truck out there and then just ice fish.
Yeah.
You can sit in your truck and jig.
Really? Good grief.
So yeah, snow machining there are just so many different cool things. The problem with the winter time is a lot of the stuff they're expensive toys, and so you have to kind of pick, like, all right, what am I gonna do? And I'm still kind of in that phase where I'm figuring out like what I'm really gonna spend some money on and investing wise, because the first year I got some cross-country skis just because there's a lot of trails in Anchorage that I can do before work, in theory, if I'm able to get up. But I also have a fat tire bike because it's just super handy, because you can ride your bike in the winter, and then I use it in the summertime to get to places to fish that would otherwise be just hiking in, but you can do a lot faster with a fat tire bike, which is like a mountain bike but with a 5-inch wide tire.
Which is what a lot of people were doing where we fished on our first day. When we went to the Russian River, he said, yeah, normally he would bike, and you could see it was 2.5 miles to the falls, and you could see where everybody had ridden their bikes in and locked them on a tree and then walked down below the falls, which that was really cool. And there's of us fishing there. Now, we mentioned it a couple times, but from the falls to 600 yards below it, you've got to have a subsistence license to fish it, which we, of course, do not. But it was cool to be able to stand there above the falls and see all the salmon, the sockeye salmon that were trying to jump up and move up the falls to spawn. And then as soon as you got to that 600-yard marker, people just start lining up. And it wasn't super busy when we were there, but still, there's a spot where you could see just how many people were sitting right below the marker trying to catch them. We saw some. We saw quite a few salmon, but never did catch one. Grant caught some real pretty rainbows, but yeah, that's cool. It was obvious to see how helpful the bike would be. So, not surprised that that's something you do a lot. But okay, so fish. Everybody on the boat that we fished with had their opinion on what their favorite fish to eat was. What is your favorite fish to eat? And have we caught it yet on this trip?
My favorite fish is whatever is in front of me. Whatever is already thawed. Whatever's already skinned. That's the main thing is I've got so many types of fish in the freezer. It's just...
What's the closest to being ready to be eaten?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, every fish has its own pros, you know. There aren't many cons about most of the fish, except for the one thing is, when in Alaska, these are all wild fish. There are hatcheries in Alaska, but they're not putting in fish that are ready to be caught. They're putting in like 3-inch long smolt that are still going to spend 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years in the ocean before they return as adults, and you catch them. So because of that, they will have some like worms sometimes, or different types of bacteria from the ocean. So you have to either freeze it all the way through, or cook it to 140 degrees. So you just have to freeze your fish to make sure you're totally safe. Because I really like to do ceviche, which is using a lime and citrus concoction to denature the proteins in the fish. The other thing with salmon, especially, is you just do not overcook it. Like, the worst thing you can do to good salmon is to overcook it. And so, the thing that I would just recommend to anybody is freeze your fish all the way through. That way, you don't have to worry about getting sick from it, even if you slightly undercook it. Because there really is no undercooking it. You can eat it raw. And yeah. I've made some poke's with fish that is not cooked with heat, and it's delicious and totally safe as long as it's handled properly. Yeah. I think that's another thing that I learned too, is back in Tennessee there was always this perception that I felt that if you go to the grocery store, the fish that you see out on the ice in the display case is better fish than the fish that's in the freezer section. But that is definitely not always the case. If I were to recommend someone in Tennessee, like where they should go to get fish, you should go to Costco, and you can get fish that is like a wild-caught Alaskan salmon that's caught and processed and frozen within hours in Bristol Bay, Alaska, and then that's about the freshest fish that you can get.
That makes sense. And on the music thing, you also have to remember, Grant went to school in Nashville. He grew up in a very musically talented family, and he went to school at Belmont, where he had live concerts and music, and good music, every single night of the week. So yeah, that would definitely be what you miss. All right, last one to wrap it up. What's the number one thing on your list in Alaska that you have not done yet? That you want to do?
Well, my goal is to spearfish the world record king salmon.
Ooh, wow!
So I haven't done that yet.
There you go. Have you ever spearfished?
I've spearfished a beer can.
Okay, spearfished a beer can. It's good practice.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Especially for a king salmon. I mean, if you can hit a beer can, you can hit a world record king salmon.
Beer cans don't swim away.
No, but I feel like if you hit something that size, if you multiply it by 10, then I feel like the movement doesn't even matter. You can hit it. Alright. Getting close to Wasilla. Looking forward to a rafting trip. We're passing
there's not a whole lot of impoundments in Alaska, and so the fact that they're getting that one up and I guess flowing again is pretty unique for the state, and pretty special because it's not like Washington and Oregon in the Northwest where they just put up dams everywhere and wrecked their salmon streams. But there's this one here in Alaska that's happening right now that's kind of cool.
That is cool. Very cool. Excluding restoring the excluded river. Alright, well, Grant, thanks for being on the podcast. Not that you really had anywhere else to go because you got me in the car for all day and even longer. So thanks for just talking while I hit record. But thanks for listening to the podcast. I believe this is episode number 14. We're keeping it rolling, and you'll probably hear from us again once we get back to Anchorage here in a few days. So thanks for listening. Check out some updates on YouTube. You can see the videos we've been putting up so far from the trip, and you'll hear from us again before too long. Thanks for listening to episode 14 of Vince Forrest. Goodbye.